Yeah, I knew how today's talk was going to be called. Today I'm going to do something different. And I thought, well, I better do something different then, huh? Because it didn't make sense. Otherwise, I'm just expounding on a principle, but not actually practicing it. And so I, after last week with our town meeting and stuff, we're talking about doing activities and things, I thought, let's shake things up here at Unity Center of Norwalk. Let's do things differently. So you never know what you're going to miss if you don't show up early. And you never know what you're going to get by showing up early and seeing what's out there. It's easy to get in a rut. Anybody? We get comfortable. We find a way that works. Excuse me. And we stick with it. And then we forget to grow, and we forget to stretch, and we forget to expand and become more inclusive and more diverse than ever before, or more diverse, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And so to look at that, though, say, okay, I want to know myself. As they say, be born anew every day. Every day be born again. And to be born again in my consciousness every day. And it's not the religious term of born again, but the spiritual term, born again, born anew, so that I see my mind differently every day as a new mind. I see my body as a new body every day. I see my home and my relationship as new every day. I see my church as new every day. I see my relationships as new every day. I see my money as new every day. I see my work as new every day. I see my play as new every day. And I think it's vital that we do this. So we have to do something different every day. We have to pray differently than we did before to see what the reaction is to our lives if I pray differently. And I proved this for years. I was, through my healing and recovery, I did things so radically differently than I had ever done in my whole life. And every day I knew life differently. When I started praying in earnest instead of fearfully, when I say fearfully, what I mean is I would say a prayer that was succinct in order to get me to sleep at night, because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to sleep that night if I didn't pray. And that's the only prayer I had, other than God cut me a break. And when I joined fellowships and I began to meet new people, and they told me about praying differently, and then I joined Unity and they taught me about praying differently and thinking differently, and what I found is sometimes 2 plus 2 didn't equal 4. At least not the 4 that I had known. It equaled a new and different 4. And it was an interesting 4. And so this is going to foul you guys up. Doing it differently today, guys. And so to think on, if I pray differently, if I converse differently, if I open my mind to new and different words, then I'm going to be thinking differently, and I'm going to live in a new consciousness, and a brighter consciousness, and a new wellness, and a new everything, so that I can live fearlessly. Imagine if we lived fearlessly. Just imagine that if we lived fearlessly every day, that there was nothing. We had respect. Don't get me wrong. And somebody says, "Well, you should fear a lion." I said, "No, I respect a lion. If it's running towards me, I'm going to run because I respect the possibility there. But I don't need to fear the lion unless I'm standing there with a thought that says it's going to kill me now, and I don't move. But some lions don't. We've seen videos of lions that come up and hug its former master, and we've seen things like that. And well, at least videos of them. I've not seen it in person because I ran. And so to look at everything differently and say, I want to try something different today. We're doing the service backwards to forwards today. And so to do it, try something differently. Be it what you eat for breakfast. just a little differently, or the way you acknowledge God as power and presence in your life, as I'm sure every single one of you do every single morning, and to maybe drive a different street to get to where you're going, to pull something out of the back of the closet that still fits, but you just haven't thought of it in ages, but you like, and you feel good in, but you haven't thought about it. It's a brighter color than you've been wearing lately. Maybe for some of us might ought to try wearing black more often, but that's what people said to me. But that's beside the point, because I like a neon. I like a bright neon. And so to take risks in your conversation, to heal a relationship, to confront in love instead of hostility, to face in a great expectation that something good will come from this that I am facing. And I don't know what it is, and I don't know what the good will look like or feel like, but I'm willing to trust it's good, and all parties involved are and is good. And so to look at that stuff and to look at life differently, I want to read this passage here, and I'm going to use my microphone stand because otherwise we're going to be clunking around with a microphone. That's just my affirmation. This comes from the book of Revelation in the Holy Spirit's interpretation of the New Testament, and it is chapter 8. Do not let fear block your sight. There is no thing to fear. When you believe there is, you feel the effects of fear. Well, that's logical, isn't it? When you realize there is only love, the illusion of fear dies. All meaning comes from the mind. All meaning comes from the mind. This is repeated because if you believe meaning comes from anything else, well, you're mistaken. You have applied meaning and then deny that the meaning was given by you. In this way, you choose fear because you choose to believe that you are what you are not. Therefore, you choose to believe that you can die. It is time to look within the mind at the beliefs you hold there. The seventh seal is meaningless, which comes from traditional revelations. Everything associated with the seventh seal has no meaning at all. In this realization, you free yourself to look at the events associated with the seventh seal, and I suggest you look up the seventh seal when we're done here, or after you leave here. Get it at lunch, look it up, discuss it. What meaning am I seeing in this? But that could be anything. You want to open up your newspaper and say, what meaning am I seeing in this? Because you have to understand, when you read the newspaper and you see something, you're telling yourself what meaning you see. And you could ask, Spirit, what's the actual meaning of this? Just want to let you know that. As you ask the question, look deeply at the hidden beliefs in your mind. Look deeply. Know that it is your mind. Do not deny that it is. The time has come to look and to release from the mind that which is in the mind that teaches only fear. What do you see in your mind when you read Revelation chapter 8? What meaning are you giving the words that are written there? What beliefs within your mind need to be let go and get healed? And so, to realize that all meaning in my life I have given to myself. All meaning that I have for everything I have given to myself. You know, it's a funny thing. I didn't put any cash in my pocket. If you were to pull cash out of your pocket, you would see that there is a meaning given to the $1 bill and a different meaning given to the $5 bill, and another meaning yet given to the $10 bill, and another meaning given to the 20 and the 50 and the 100 and the $500 bills you carry in your pocket. And to look at that and say, oh, I've given this the meaning it has. It has no inherent meaning. It's paper. I just pulled paper out of my pocket. But because of a number written on it, I've decided if this one means this, and this one means this, and this one means this, and this one means this. and to look at that and coins, listen, oh, pennies, because they mean that. Unless they have wheat on the back, and then they have, oh, I wonder if that means something. And then remember the collecting the wheat pennies and anybody here old enough to remember trading stamps and the meaning those stamps had, and the different colors of stamps and everything, and the books we had, and how many books. So you see, there's that. And then we have our TV stations, and it used to be CBS meant this, and ABC meant this, and NBC meant this, and PBS meant too many of us. and now there's so many channels, and Prime means this, and Netflix means this, and Apple means this, and some of them mean I can't afford that, and some mean I have to have that. And some mean, why is it only on once a week? And some of the meaning we give it. And then the actual shows themselves have, oh, it's a funny one. That has that meaning. And then the one means this. And the horrifying ones, which can go in a lot of different directions, let's face it, mean this. And I can only watch this downstairs I can't watch this in bed before I go to sleep, because that has that meaning. And then I need this one before I go to sleep up here, because that has that meaning. And then I have this one that I can actually fall asleep to, because it has that meaning. And it's amazing. And a brand new car has this meaning, and a 2-year-old same car has that meaning. And then we get information from our friends. Our misinformed friends. And how do I know they're misinformed? Because they had parents. Same way I'm misinformed, because I had parents who told me their misinformation, and I chose to agree with them because I didn't know better. And then we get those other friends. Well, oh no, well they read a lot, so they must know. And this one does this, so they must know. It's the same way. Had we done the service the traditional order today, and I did this same talk, it would just be a talk without any experience to it. And if I got up here and I talked about prayer and we never prayed, where would the experience be in it? We might become more intellectually sound in things, but we wouldn't have the experience. Has anyone ever had a healing? You've never had a healing? You of all people? Okay, I didn't see a hand going. So you know the difference between having a healing and talking about healing. There's a big, huge difference. I was on the phone with somebody the other day who was in need of a great healing. It's very clear he's in need of a great healing. And he's just focused, I've got to get a job. I've got to get a job, and I've got to find a new place to live, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that, because my wife's never going to speak to me again, and I'm never going to get to see my children again. Now, none of that is true. By the way, none of that is true. They just had circumstances in the household that are just disturbing and distressing. His wife has not said any of these things, but in his head, he's telling himself this stuff. And so to look at that and say, oh, I have given this all the meaning it has, and I keep saying, focus on your healing. Focus on what needs to be healed today. Well, yeah, but I got to get a job. No. The way it's made for you, you don't have to get a job today. You have enough money that you don't have to get a job today. But I have to get a job today. Because in his mind, he's saying that is the only path to self-esteem. I said, no, healing is the path to self-esteem. And I've met other people like this. I just have to figure this out. And then I'll do the healing. No, do the healing. And it will be figured out for you. It's kind of like, I have to figure out the result of the prayer, and then I'll pray. I have to know what's going to happen. You know, I'm not getting on my knees and praying without knowing what's going to happen from that. And when I started my healing process before Unity, they said, get on your knees and pray. I'd never prayed on my knees in my life. And we didn't come from that kind of church. But I did, because I needed a healing. And healing was the number one priority for me. A healing of spirit, healing of mental. And I guess, yes, also physical in the way that I had damaged my body and stuff. But I said, oh, fine, I'll get down on my knees and pray. So that night I went home from that group and I got down on my knees and I prayed. Now, what I did, it's a wonderful prayer. Many of you have heard me do it before. Some of you know it. I opened a book to this prayer and it said, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. I didn't know what that prayer meant. I didn't have a clue, but it sounded right. It just somehow sounded right. Many of you know the Serenity Prayer. That never resonated with me like this one did. There was something about this. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me. You know, there were words like build with me. Do with me as thou wilt. Well, I figured God's will couldn't be anything but good. So let's get on board with okay, whatever God is. And I didn't know what God was either. I had false meaning. I had childhood meaning. I had lots of mixed stuff. I had more meaning in my head about religion than I did God. And the meaning I gave religion wasn't pleasant. I didn't trust it, but I thought, God is not the same as religion. So I thought, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me, do with me as thou wilt. And then I read, relieve me of the bondage of self. I thought, what the heck's that? Bondage of self, bondage of self. It told me I was somehow faulty and flawed in my behaviors and in my thinking, because otherwise why would I need to be relieved of this bondage of self, whatever it was. And at first I thought it just meant bondage of self. Maybe that just means that I would think anyone in truth would ever want to hurt me, or that I would ever want to hurt somebody else. And so I thought, okay, relieve me of that. But why? That I may better do thy will. Still didn't know what God's will was. And then the next part was take away my difficulties. And I thought, oh, yes, that means my rent will be paid. But you see, my rent being paid meant I would have a secure home. And that was very important to me, that I have a secure home. I have a phone that works and is paid for. All the utilities are on. And I had a great, I won't say little apartment. I had a great apartment on West 44th Street. It's not big in terms of square footage, but it was great in terms of New York. It was my own. It had an eat-in kitchen. It had windows that faced 2 streets. It had a bedroom that could fit a queen-size bed and 2 nightstands and an armoire, closets about the size of this piano, and I could afford it. And secure doors. I felt very secure, and wide marble steps to get up. There was everything about that building that I felt very safe in, and it was close to work. So take away my difficulties meant I would live in a very secure home and continue to live there. But there was a good reason why I was fine to want to have my difficulties taken away, so that my victory over any difficulty could bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. So my having a great life was altruistic, because it meant that people could say, Shawn, how did you do this? And I'd say, I prayed. I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped some things because they were in the way of my prayer life. But I prayed differently, and I found a God that I trusted and that I believed could find me trustworthy, and everything changed. I kept trying things differently. I'd pray that prayer a little bit differently. I finally did get information on what God's will for me was, which was to be happy, joyous, and free. I thought, I can get on board with that. That's good stuff. So, that I may better do thy will, that I may better be happy, joyous, and free. Hot dog. What a fantastic thing. And so, to do that, and so my life could become one of service because I trusted. And all that happened because I prayed differently. Because I walked a different street to work. Because I read different books than I had ever read before. Because I treated people differently. And the only reason I treated anybody differently is because I couldn't bear the conflict in life that I had had previously. And I wanted to see people differently. And I wanted to be seen differently than I had before. And so if I did have a confrontation with someone, it was in the interest of healing rather than maintaining problem. And so if I put it in their hands, here's the deal. I'm going to trust you with this, whatever. Are you trustworthy with it? And if they said yes, great. And if they proved not to be trustworthy, then it was on them. I gave us both a chance for healing, for trust. As long as I didn't break the trust, I was fine. But you have to give everybody an opportunity for trust. Because people have, yes, certain people have betrayed us in the past, and I've betrayed people in the past. But it's a new day. We're trying something differently. So we give each other a chance for trust. As long as I don't break the trust, then I'm okay. I can't control anybody else. I mean, I'll talk about it happened in the 12-step meeting, and people were concerned with the Zoom and stuff about anonymity. It's anonymous. No, but people can be seen on video, and they wanted to vote to take the Zoom away. But my thought was, is the Zoom helping people? Is the Zoom overall making a difference? That people could come to a meeting and when they couldn't get there in person. And you know, some rigid people, well, they should be back and being in person, but they're not, for whatever reason. Some people don't even live around here anymore, but this is still their home group. And I said, now, if it's anonymity is your reason for this argument, let's be clear here. Anonymity is an illusion. There's no such thing as anonymity. If you're going to trust a bunch of people like us with your secrets, you're in trouble. Any one of us could have a camera on, and you don't even know it, recording everything that's said. Anybody here from here could go and tell all their friends and their family, everybody who was here. It's an illusion. What I can tell you is, I can't afford to break your anonymity. For my well-being and my healing, I'm not going to break your anonymity, because I don't know if I can stay on my path if I do. But I can't trust you with mine. So I'm going to trust God that if you go and tell the world I was here today and what I said, it's for the good. We voted to keep the Zoom because I can't afford to be resentful of all that. But at the same time, I can't afford to break the trust. And that's how I always saw it. When I did lights and sound for a living, I wasn't always pleasant. You know, I worked in a nightclub, and everything is in the immediate moment. I lit shows, and a lot of personalities and a lot of emotions are at their peak, and a lot of artistry going on. And so we didn't always see eye to eye on how to speak with each other and to each other and with each other. And sometimes getting a performer to the stage wasn't pleasant. And I was one of the ones who wasn't pleasant about it. But I always knew, once they're on the stage, you don't betray them. You never punish anybody during their show. Ever. Because if I had, I would have been untrustworthy. And that would have been reason to have me no longer be there. My attitude was not a good enough reason to let me go. But if I had broken the trust, it'd be like if I went and stole money from the church, the trust would be broken. It'd be like if you came to me for counseling and you told me your deepest, darkest secrets, and then I talk about it here. The trust would be broken. And so we have to think about this stuff and wonder, I'm going to do something differently today, and you have to decide, what is that different thing? And not based in fear of losing, but in the rejoicing of gaining a new perspective, gaining something that you've been longing for such a long time, like freedom. Just to touch on that last thing a little bit, I knew a woman, an old timer in the fellowship I was in early on, and then she was an old timer, and she was talking about her husband breaking her anonymity, and how dare he at his workplace? So I told somebody I work with about you today. He's probably going to be calling you. How dare you? And she called her mentor in fellowship, and she said, he did this. How dare he? What should I do? And her sponsor said, oh, give him permission to break your anonymity. I said, what? Yeah, it'll set you free. Then you don't have to worry about it. And so she went to him and said, you have my permission to break my anonymity. I never forgot that story. So what I did, I told a good friend of mine, who was also in this fellowship with me, I gave her permission. I said, tell anybody you want, because I knew she'd tell fewer people if she had permission to than if it were a secret. And so in life, we really have no secrets. We have boundaries. And we don't, as they say, don't cast your pearls before swine, because let's face it, a pig does not know what to do with pearls. And somebody with no boundaries doesn't know what to do with your privacy. Not your secrets, but your privacy. And the weather does not always know what to do to protect your house at home. So you have to set the weather free to do what it does, or pray differently. May Rowland, who was one of the first heads of Silent Unity, there's a wonderful story about her, that she lived in Kansas, home tornadoes, Kansas City, all that weather. And one day she saw a tornado coming right to her, towards her living room window. Her what do you call this?
Bay.
No.
Picture window.
Picture window. Giant picture window. And she looked at it and said, hell no! And that thing turned. You know, your prayer's your prayer. What do you believe? Hell no. And off it went. Edwin Gaines tells a story. She got out of her car and she parked her car in a dark alley for some reason, somewhere in the country. And these guys started coming towards her. Now, I had first heard this story that she looked right at them and said, the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, and the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. And she said, and the person told me the story, said, and they just turned and walked away. So I asked her about it. I said, did that happen? She said, well, not quite like that. What happened was, I said, light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches me. I just kept saying it over and over again until they thought I was a crazy woman and ran away. But prayer is prayer. You know, there's so much for us to experience, so much for us to be in the beings that we are. There's so many great experiences. Let's not ever limit ourselves again by staying stuck, by being afraid to open up to new thoughts, open up to whole healings, open up to, I can drive over a bridge, whether I'm afraid or not. I can walk down a street that rats are on, whether I'm afraid or not. I can write a book, whether I'm afraid or not. Easy for him to say. I can love someone whose cell phone goes off in public. I can love someone who doesn't love themselves. I can love me in spite of not loving myself some days. I can know that I am love. I can love the weather, even if it's not what I prefer. I can love my body, even though it's not what I prefer. I can love beans. I can like beans. I can eat beans. In spite of not caring for them. I can know that I am rich and not base it on the number 1, the number 5, the number 10, the number 50. I can know that I am rich by doing something differently today. And where I'm going to start is in what I think. So I'm going to think differently today. I'm going to pray differently today. And I'm going to be all that I can be today. Thank you.